Views expressed by CamaPlan podcast guests may not reflect those of CamaPlan. CamaPlan does not guarantee the accuracy of information provided by guests, nor does it endorse or recommend any individual or organization. CamaPlan is not an investment advisor, CPA, realtor, or attorney. You are encouraged to conduct your own due diligence before making investment choices. For any tax, legal, accounting, investment, or other questions, please consult a specialist. Hi, I'm Michael Duncan, and welcome back to the Road to Financial Freedom. This podcast is brought to you by CamaPlan, a self-directed IRA administrator focused on educating investors on how to grow retirement savings faster through alternative investments. In each episode, we're going to take an in-depth look at the many roads taken to financial freedom and how they differ for each of our guests. Our goal is to help the listeners learn how they can achieve their own financial freedom through the experience and stories of experts that have done just that. Today's guest spent over 25 years working for Silicon Valley startups before buying his first rental property in 2010 and building his investment business, Clark Street Properties. In 2018, after leaving the corporate rat race, he moved to investing in flip and rental properties in the New England area. I'm very excited to welcome Ed Mathews to the show today. Ed, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Michael. How are you?
I'm good. You know, we just met. We were talking a little bit, some Villanova basketball and some other stuff like that. Cats. So I am now in a great mood. Not that I wasn't before, but I'm even
especially
more
because they actually won last night.
Exactly. Nice. So I am very excited to talk to you. I think I'm just going to kind of get right into it. And I would love for you to just tell me a little bit more about how you ended up where you're at now. You know, I mentioned that you were doing stuff for Silicon Valley startups, and that's pretty drastically different from what you're doing now.
Diametrically opposed, I would say, right? So I spent, like you said, I spent about 24, almost 25 years working for Silicon Valley companies. And, you know, I loved most of it, especially the people that I got to work with. It was an amazing ride and I certainly enjoyed it. It's funny, though, I don't necessarily miss it much. I had a conversation with an old boss of mine not too long ago, and he said, any chance you'd want to come back? And I said, no, I'm good. Thanks. Really good to talk to you, but no. And so, you know, I spent the time, flying all over the world and selling software and services and solutions and, you know, helping companies advance their own business plans. And, you know, one of the things that I came to the realization of was, you know, I was traveling, like I said, about 150, some years 200 nights a year. And I have two daughters who I absolutely adore and a wife who I adore. And it turns out the three of them actually like me as well. And, but I wasn't around. And so when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad in 2008, you know, the Purple Bible, and it fundamentally changed my life about 3 years later. And what I mean by that is, I had all the classic excuses of, I don't know where to find the deals. I don't know where, this is 2008, right? The world economically is cratering. And I was the one that didn't have enough, I guess, courage in myself to be able to, hunker down and find deals. I didn't know where to get the money. I wasn't, I wasn't a wealthy person. And frankly, I didn't have time because I was flying all over the world. And, when I really looked back on that in those 3 years, what I had to overcome was fear. And, because I absolutely had the wherewithal. I was a sales and marketing person. Could I find deals? You bet. I did it for a living. Right. And could I raise capital? Well, some of it came out of my pocket. Some of it came out of, friends and family. And, eventually Clark Street Properties grew into Clark Street Capital. And now we work with folks all over the country that either are using their own self-directed IRAs to invest passively, or they're participating outside of their IRAs and from their cash position. But so over the course of time, we would flip a couple of properties and take the capital and use that capital to buy a multifamily, and that would create cash flow. And over about a 7 or 8 year period, my wife and I finally realized that, hey, our portfolio actually surpasses our annual income, from our W-2 jobs. I don't need to work anymore. And, at that point I was 47 years old, and, so I was still a young man. So, I wasn't going to retire. I was going to do something full time, and the gift that side hustle gave me was I got 150 nights back with my kids and my wife. And that was the ultimate freedom. And it still is 5 years later. And, so I went full time into real estate in February of 2018. So we just actually celebrated our 5th year anniversary of doing this on full time. And I wouldn't change a darn thing other than I would have started 10 years earlier.
Well, first of all, congrats on 5 years.
Thank you.
And it's very clear to me, like this is just, it's more than just, moving full time into something that you're passionate about. It became something that allowed you to, financial freedom. It seems like it's more than that. It's just the freedom to be with the people that you love and to do the things you're passionate about. And, you mentioned before the podcast, they know what your face looks like now. Your daughters know
I don't have to reintroduce myself every Friday night.
Exactly. And the fact that you knew that number, like 150 nights, like you knew that immediately. It's incredible to hear the way that this has impacted your life just outside of, from a financial perspective. And I'm sure there's a very big financial aspect of it that made your life better in a lot of ways, but it's clear that that's not the driving reason that you did it.
No, I get to go to every softball game and every swim meet and every choral concert and every play. And, I actually get to go out with my wife every once in a while and have a dinner date and catch up and see how things are going. And, it's that freedom and the time with the people that I really care about is sure, I'm focused on building a financial engine that will eventually create generational wealth. And, sure that, the money is great, but, the fact is that spending that time with my family and my close friends has been invaluable. And it was something that I didn't realize I missed as much until I actually had it back and went, wow, I really miss these people.
So moving forward, I guess, it's been 5 years since you turned the St. Clark Street. Every time I see ST, I want to say Saint, and that's never what it is. Clark Street Properties in this Clark Street Capital. It's been 5 years. Where are you taking it going forward? Are you planning to see something expanding out of the New England area? Are you just going to focus in and do more of the same stuff, or do you have plans?
Yeah. So our mission is pretty straightforward. And that is that, so kind of the first step of this is to answer the big question. Our objective is 1,000 units by the end of 2025. And we're a little bit ahead of schedule right now, which is good. As far as the region, our focus has always been on, a very specific niche. And that is that, and I'll get into why in a moment, but we buy dilapidated, broken down apartment buildings from landlords who, quite frankly, aren't very good at their jobs. And our focus is on buying them at the right price so that we can take our money and investor money and make them clean and safe, phase one. Phase two is upgrade all the common areas so that the folks that live there understand there's a new sheriff in town. We're actually going to take care of this building and start to repair the relationship with those residents. And then third phase is making it beautiful. And all of that is all about building a return over the course of a 5 year plus hold, right? And so the fact is that first I like to sleep well at night, and knowing that we're doing right by the folks that count on us to provide a clean and safe home is something that ethically and morally I feel obligated to. It also fires me up quite a bit. One of the reasons that I get out of bed, like a shot on Monday morning is because I'm really excited to go to work, right? And because I think we're doing the right thing. But the other part of it is frankly financial, right? Because the fact is that when someone is, living in a place where they feel safe and they are proud of where they live, they do three very specific things. One, they tend to stay, which is awesome. because that means that they are, I don't have to turn that apartment over, repaint it year after year after year, for instance. I can, we can come in and touch up, but the fact is that turning an apartment can cost several hundred to several $1,000s, when a resident moves out. When they're happy and the place is already fixed up and clean, then they're more than happy to stay. Second thing is they take really good care of the building, right? Because it's their home. It's not just a place where they live. And the third piece of this is that all of those things, when I remove vacancy and I remove repair and maintenance, or at least a chunk of it, out of the property, our buildings, the net operating income of those buildings grows very quickly. And it's not that we're maxing out rents, although, we're probably within 80 to 90% of the market at any given building at any given time, given turnover. But the fact is that our buildings tend to be a lot more profitable, which means they're a lot more valuable. Taking a 10-unit building to the left and a 10-unit building to the right, we're running the building on the left. A slumlord is running the building on the right. I guarantee you 100% of the time, our building is not only operating more efficiently, but it's also more valuable and it's throwing off more cash. And so, you can do right by your residents and still do very well financially. And so we've built Clark Street Capital on that premise. And we have really, frankly, exploded in terms of growth. We're acquiring as many buildings as we possibly can. Here in New England, they tend to be C-class buildings. So we buy C- class buildings and turn them into C+ buildings. And then we manage them and hold them for, in most cases, forever.
So how long does that process take, I guess, to get it to the point where you feel like you're comfortable with it? Usually, clean and safe
takes anywhere from 1 to 3 months, depending on how many problems there are. And it can be anything from, redoing the HVAC system because the old one is spitting out CO2 and it's flat out dangerous, which we've seen a lot, to removing knob and tube wiring, which is the wiring they used to use back in the early 1900s, which is not grounded and really dangerous and tends to cause fires. We see that. I have 2 buildings right now where we're taking it all out, right? And it amazes me that these buildings still exist. And so, the easy fixes are, 30 days. The more extensive fixes are usually 60 to 90 days to get clean and safe. And then in parallel, we're upgrading the common areas, new flooring, new lighting, new painting, repairing the walls, repairing all the windows in the common areas. And, that in parallel typically will take, probably 30 to 60 days as well, kind of in parallel. And then with the upgraded units, invariably there's usually 1 or 2 units, a percentage, 5 to 10% of the units that are vacant anyway, because the landlord wasn't very good at his job. And so, we take that opportunity to upgrade the units. So that's new kitchens, new bathrooms, new flooring, new lighting, basically new everything. And then we offer those to the existing tenants and see if they want to move. And if they choose to move, then we'll take we play kind of hopscotch, right? So the resident will move from unit A to unit B, and then we'll go into unit A and revamp that one and offer it to the rest of the building. And, slowly but surely, that's one strategy. Another strategy is that, in a lot of cases, we lose 25 to 40% of the residents just because the relationship is so broken down between the previous owner and the resident that they don't want to even try. And I totally understand that. And, we try to make their lives as easy as possible when they decide to move. And so those are the 2 most prevalent ways that we upgrade. And then over the course of probably 18 months, we can usually turn, pretty much all of the units. So that now you've got a brand spanking new building, basically wrapped around in a shell that was built in 1890.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's all, I love the way you laid it out too, which I'm sure it took a lot of time to kind of narrow down, but those 3 simple steps, they'd make perfect sense once you put it like that, once you say that. And I can see why they're effective. And it sounds like they are.
So far, so good.
Yeah. So moving back a little bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, around 2008-ish, the world was cratering in terms of all
Yeah.
the financial stuff, and we don't need to rehash that.
No.
But what was kind of like, when did the light turn on for you that this is something that you're passionate about, something you wanted to do, and what actually made you take that first step?
So I'm going to answer that two ways. One, I had an affinity for real estate. My dad is a master carpenter, although he never did it as a vocation. He was a sales guy as well, and a very good one at that. And so but we built sheds and helped building decks, and I carried his tool belt around. Some of my earliest memories are handing him a hammer at a porch that we were building for a friend of his, right? And so I always, growing up, even when I was a teenager, I was working for builders, ranging from carrying the heavy stuff from one place to another to sweeping up, and in some cases they actually let me frame and do some other really cool things. And I just had a bug the whole my entire childhood, to the point where I was like, someday I'm going to build houses for a living. And so that desire kind of got put on the back burner because I went to college. I got a job in technology. I married, the love of my life. We had kids, and there wasn't room for real estate, right? Because I had to, I had other responsibilities.
Yeah.
And so the dream changed temporarily. The dream then became, hey, I'd like to feed my kids on a regular basis. So we did that instead. And then so in 2008, a friend of mine gave me a book, that book I mentioned earlier, Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it fundamentally changed. It so well crystallized what I wanted to do with as much of my life as humanly possible, that it sent me on a first off, an introspective journey of finding the courage to move forward and act. And then when I finally did, being able to build a business around that actually threw off cash that supported my family, that took time because it was a side hustle. But, once we got traction, it made a lot of sense just to move forward. I was flipping houses and really enjoying that. I joke that I don't drink, I don't do drugs. So I guess flipping is my cocaine, right? So that's like my vice. I love, to be able to, I love finding them. I love designing them. I love fixing them. I love cleaning them up. I love selling them to nice families. And it's just it's one big honking adrenaline ride, and I love it all. But the thing with flips is that it's also financially empty calories, right?
Yeah.
So, once you find a house, you fix it, you make it beautiful, and you sell it to a family, that's it. There's nothing left, right?
Yeah.
You get a nice chunk of money in a lot of cases, but there's nothing there to create wealth. It creates cash flow instead. And so one of the things that I had, looked at was we had a small portfolio of multifamilies that threw off cash every single month. And I got the same juice out of finding those little apartment buildings, fixing them up, making them clean and safe, making them beautiful, and then renting them to families. And it threw off cash every month. And every once in a while, every few years, I could refinance it, pull a little money out, and then go buy another one, right? And so I got the same kind of adrenaline dopamine hit from doing that I did from flipping. And then so I kind of wound down my flipping business probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and focused entirely on multifamily. And we've been aggressively growing our portfolio ever since.
Yeah, and I mean, as long as it sounds like you get the same take out of it. I'm sure you probably miss parts of, the flipping and the hands-onness of that, but it sounds like you have the same passion, you get the same dopamine hit from it.
Same, it's the same feeling. And, the cool part about the multifamily piece is that, I feel, it allows me and our team to help a whole lot of families that, frankly, were being disrespected and weren't able to live in a place where they lived because they had to, not because they wanted to. And, that is not the American dream, nor is it, I would say, ethical. And so the fact is that now I can go in with our team who's amazing and be able to, rehab a building in very short order and give them the home that they, if they deserve. And, it's a simple relationship, right? We commit to them that we're going to provide a clean and safe place where they can be proud to live. And we're going to give them, class A service. I don't care what you do for a living. I don't care how much money you have in the bank. We're going to treat you like a class A building, even though you live in a class C building. You're going to get the exact same service. That means yes, sir, no, sir. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Thank you. It's my pleasure to help you. How else can we help? When something breaks, we fix it same day or next day. They get a phone call the next day, making sure that that we got it right. Just general customer service. And, that is the feedback we get is tremendous. Right. And, it's not always people, sending us emails or texts or, even saying thank you. It's just, they stay, they vote with their luggage. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You probably get just as much out of that. I mean, especially when you see the max exodus that probably occurs because of the poor relationship with the previous landlord.
One of the things that really fires me up is when somebody lets us know that they want to stay for another year. It's awesome.
That has to be a good feeling.
It's a high five in our office. Yep, it is.
So going back a little bit even further, your Silicon Valley days.
Yeah.
What did you did that for a long time out of college for 25 plus years. What did you take away from that, all those years doing that you can now apply into this new field that you're full-time in?
That's a great question. So I learned a lot from the people that I worked with and for. I learned a lot from the people that worked for me. And, one of the things, you always see people who are successful in that industry. And one of the qualities, and I've really studied, how does Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, how do these people get to that level? And, to a person, however you feel about them, the fact is that they are pillars of integrity, and they have character, and they do what they say they're going to do, and they mean what they say, and they hold people accountable. Different styles, right? Some people are tyrants and some people are servant oriented. I tend to be more the latter than the former. But the fact is that, integrity and character matter. That's first and foremost. I also think, I used to joke, but it wasn't really a joke, is that if I walked into a room with my team and I was the smartest person in the room, we were screwed. And so, Rob Bernstein, who, was my boss at a company called Coupa, always used to say the company with the best team wins every time. And he's right.
Absolutely.
And so, the way that I apply that to our business today is that I'm very focused. When we're hiring people, we hire passion players, people who get our mission and want to, contribute to that mission. I'm not after paycheck players, right? I'm not, if you're just here to get paid on Friday, you're not a fit. And that's okay. There's plenty of places that you can go do that. But this isn't one of them. And so that's a takeaway. The other thing that was a huge takeaway is, what motivates human beings to act, right? And, that comes from my marketing and sales experience. And, the fact is that, companies change, people change for one of really two major reasons. And there's ancillary reasons, of course, but, they either change because of pain or they change because of pleasure, right? And so, if their software system is causing them so much angst and pain and stress, then it becomes relatively straightforward when you bring a solution that solves their problem and does it, a lot less stressfully, right? And stress can be on the people and it can be on the system, right? Same thing goes for real estate in that, people change because of, pain or pleasure. And what I mean by that is, like, for instance, a resident who has lived in a C- class building, whose landlord, I hate that term, but it sometimes fits. They disrespect and don't serve their residents. And the pain of that is palpable. And so, when you come into that kind of situation, you're looking to reset the relationship. What I'm looking to do is say, yes, I understand and I hear you, and you're right that this was a painful process. However, if you just stick with us for the next 60 to 90 days, you're going to see the pleasure part of this, which is we're going to make everything brand spanking new. We're going to fix everything. And, in very short order, you're going to be really happy where you live. And we're actually going to return your phone call. We're actually going to show up. We're actually going to follow up. And so, that accountability, holding ourselves accountable, and we hold each other at Clark Street, we hold each other accountable. That pleasure principle, helps us retain, our residents. Some people leave, and that's okay. The pain was just too great to get over, and I get that. And they don't know me from Adam. I'm just the next guy that owns the building, right? Until they start to see what we do. And so, from a sales and marketing perspective, I know that that's what's motivating human beings. And so, my job is to show them and demonstrate, like, through action, not words, that, we mean what we say we mean, and we're going to actually fix this property. The other cool part about that is that, our goal, the mantra inside is always, we want to be the best building in the neighborhood. And so the other marketing piece of this that I take out of from my software days is that I know my avatar, right? I know the human being and what that person does for a living and how they live and where they want to live and all that. I know, we've named them in our target residents. And one of the major things we know about our target residents is that by and large, they live within 1.5 miles of the building that we own. And so, the goal of, managing vacancy and removing turnovers from the business is really twofold. One is treat your residents well, right? And do what you say you're going to do. The other part is have a waiting list. And so when you build the brand of that building, their friends, the people that live there and the people that live in the neighborhood, a lot of them know each other, right? Yeah. And they're friends or they're even family. And so, as vacancies come, the couple has a baby and they live in a 1-bedroom apartment, they want something bigger. We don't have anything to accommodate them. So they move on, and that, we wish them well. But the couple upstairs may know someone who wants that apartment, and that person's been on our waiting list for 6 weeks. And, then our team will call and say, hey, the apartment you've been looking for just came open. Do you want to come see it? Right. And so what it does is it compresses what can be a 3 to 6 week process down to days.
Yeah.
Right. Because, in a lot of cases, we're renting the apartment to the next resident right as, or even maybe a little bit before the current residents move out. Right. And obviously we have to be cognizant of the fact that they're moving out, and moving is one of the most stressful things you can do in life.
Yes. It is.
But in a lot of cases, we've built up enough of a relationship where we can ask, hey, would it be okay if I walk somebody through, for 5 minutes to let them look at the apartment? And, some people say no, and that's fine. And other people say yes, and that's great. So, my goal here is when someone moves out, let's say they move out on a Thursday, my guys come in Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, fix everything that needs to be fixed, paint everything that needs to be painted. And by, Tuesday, it's rent ready. So, that's how we operate.
Yeah. I mean, the sales marketing background is definitely very prevalent in everything you just told me. So makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And so as much as I love hearing about people's successes, I think it's equally as important to hear about people's failures, because I say this in almost every episode, I feel like, but I'm a big believer that you learn more by failing than you do by succeeding.
Yep.
So do you have like just a cautionary tale or something?
Yes, I have several.
Something along those lines that you think would be helpful for anyone to hear that they can learn from, that you learned from.
Would you like to hear a story about how I collapsed a 12,000 square foot building?
That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah.
Cool.
I would
Okay.
love that.
So we bought a property, a 5-unit property in New Britain, Connecticut. Great building, nice neighborhood, and good, hardworking, working class neighborhood, right? These folks that live in our buildings crank a wrench for a living to fix your car. They pour your coffee at the local restaurant. They, they'll check you out at Walmart or Target, right? Just people, salt of the earth kind of people, right? And so we buy this apartment building, and I get a phone call from our then property manager, and at like 6 a.m. the morning after we closed, and a 6 a.m. phone call from a property manager is never good news.
No.
Right.
No.
And so she called and said, "Hey, turn on the local news." And what I saw was the 12,000 square foot building next door burning. And our building was fine. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was hurt in the other building. It had been condemned and abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "Everything's fine, but I wanted you to know that we're on this, and we're already on site and making sure that everybody is okay, and everybody is okay." And so so that happens in February of 2018. I'm not 3 weeks into my full-time gig.
Oh,
right?
God.
And I'm like, okay, so this is how this is going to go. Holy cow, what have I done? Right. And so eventually I tracked down through a friend of mine, tracked down the owner of that building, who really wasn't, he was one of the landlords that we typically buy buildings from.
Yeah.
Take the inference.
Yep.
And we ended up buying the building for a really short amount of money, not a lot of money at all, because it was just basically a brick building.
Yep.
That needed new everything. And so turns out that and I'm for those of you listening to the podcast and not watching, I'm holding up quote fingers. The building was struck by lightning in the basement and in the roof, and everything else. In the
basement.
Yeah, strange.
Struck by lightning. Wow.
Yeah. And so it actually only burned in a specific area, and the rest of the building, although in horrendous condition, that had to do with the landlord, not the fire. Turns out the building was salvageable. We hired a structural engineer, and he went in and said, you need to replace this, this, and this, but the building itself is okay. And so we bought it. And step one is when you buy a fire burned building like that, first step is to secure the building, which means board up all the windows and lock the doors down, put fencing around it so no one gets curious and goes in and gets hurt, right? So that's step one. And then step two was to start to make it weather tight so we could start working on it, because it's February, right? So it's not unlike this winter. That winter 5 years ago, it was cold and snowy, and right. And so we wanted to get it as weather tight as quickly as possible. So that means we have to remove the roof. And so with these old brick buildings, this building had been built in 1900, I believe. And, with these brick buildings, there are a series of supports that keep the building, together basically. Right. So it's a brick box. And then there are joists, pieces of wood that go across the building. And then above that are rafters that hold the roof decking. And then there's the decking, and then there's the roof material, right? In this case, it was a rubber roof. And so I hired a contractor here's the mistake. I did not do as much due diligence on as I should have, nor did I do any due diligence on the subcontractors that guy hired. And the second mistake, and both were tragic. And so what happened was no one got hurt, by the way. This story is actually a happy ending.
I'm glad to hear it.
So I hire the contractor who hires the sub to remove the roof decking and the rafters, but leave the joists so that the support is there. And they start on a Monday. I am in New York City, meeting with a partner and a couple of investors. And I get a phone call. Hey, there's a problem at the building on Arch. And I said, okay, well, take a picture and send it to me. And what I saw was the back wall of the building had fallen into the parking lot that on the 4th floor. So that was 50 feet of solid brick, 3 layers deep and 15 feet tall. All that weight went boom right into the parking lot. No one was hurt, knock on wood. And I said, okay, well, how the heck did that happen? And he showed me the video that the contractor had basically cleared the 4th floor of all wood, including supports. And so it was just sitting there. And that's not very good.
No.
And so, then you're on the phone with the city. Hey, this is going on. We're on the phone with a structural engineer. We need to figure out what we're going to do about this building and keep it safe. Because if it collapses, that's
bad.
That's very bad.
Yeah.
And while we're doing all that, I had told the contractor, support the front wall. Here's how you do that. There's a structural engineer on site, like within an hour of the initial collapse. And for whatever reason, the subcontractor didn't move fast enough. He didn't act with the urgency that I had hoped he would. And the front wall fell into the building. This one was even taller. So this was, 22 or 23 feet tall, 3 courses, falls into the building and destroys all of the 3rd floor joists as well. Now the building's toast. And so the lesson learned is, and it's really hard to work for me right now since then, because, a signing of a independent contractor contract, I would liken to a colonoscopy. Now, in terms of what I do and how we vet the folks that work for us, because I made a big mistake. Fortunately, it was my money, no one else's money.
Yeah.
And ultimately we were able to work it all out financially and no one got hurt. So, happy ending all the way around, but gigantic mistake on my part that could have cost somebody their life.
Yeah.
Certainly could have ruined me financially. And fortunately, neither happened. But for the grace of God, we got very lucky. So
I'm going to be honest. I worked on pools for a while after graduating college.
Yeah.
I once drained a pool just completely overnight. Your story makes me feel a lot better about my mistake. I'm going to be honest. I didn't collapse a building. So that's great to hear. At least for me personally.
Yeah, well, I'm glad it made you feel good. And, the fact is that I now have that skill set. Not only can I collapse a building, but I know how to fix it. So that's pretty cool.
Not only can I collapse it, I think I just found the name of the episode, How to Collapse and Repair Buildings.
Yeah.
But that's an incredible story. I love that. And again, I think you probably learned a lot more from that experience than you do with most of your successes. So
we are a lot smarter today than we were that day. I can assure you.
So finally, before I get to my final question, I would love if you could just tell the listeners where to find you. I know you have your own podcast. If you can tell us a little bit about that. But please feel free to plug yourself all you want.
Yeah, thanks. So Clark Street Capital is the company. And so you can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram at Clark Street Capital. And that's Clark ST Capital. You can also find us on the web at clarkst.com, clarkst.com. If you ever want to talk to us, I'm Ed at clarkst.com. And you can always call our office at 860-675-5800. We're easy to reach, and I'm a cheap date. As I was telling Michael earlier, I'll spend 15, 20, 30 minutes on the phone. I'll tell you everything you want to know about real estate for the price of a cup of coffee. And most of the time I'll buy the coffee. So
next time I'm in New England,
please do take me up on it. I'm sincere.
And you have a podcast.
Yes. So we also host our own podcast, The Real Estate Underground. And, on that, we are focused on interviewing other real estate investors from a whole host of other asset classes, mostly multifamily, but, we have folks from self-storage and flipping and land and, a whole bunch of other asset classes. And, the idea there is if you are inexperienced, you're going to hopefully hear a whole bunch of gold nuggets that will help you get going. And if you're experienced, you're going to hear a whole bunch of kind of next level strategies and tactics to help you, protect your assets and also to grow your portfolio.
Love that. Yeah. So finally, My last question that I like to ask every guest that's on, what does financial freedom mean to you?
Time is probably the biggest thing. And it's time to live my life the way I want to live it. And, like we were talking about earlier, that's being able to go to my daughter's swim meets and softball games and soccer games, and, going to see them sing at the choral concert. Or now my daughter is a sophomore at a college down in Pennsylvania. And, I talked to her last week and she sounded a little down. So I'm pretending, hopefully she won't hear this, but I'm pretending to have a business trip down to Philly just so I can, just for the excuse of being able to go buy her dinner. And so it's it's wonderful. And I get to see and spend a lot of time with my wife, who is my person and my favorite person in the world. And that is what financial freedom means to me.
I love that. Ed, thank you so much for coming on today. I had a lot of fun
talking
to
you.
It was truly awesome. Yes. And on behalf of myself, on behalf of Ed, and on behalf of CamaPlan, thank you guys so much for listening, and I will talk to you next time.